Welcome to this YouTube channel. In this video we are going to talk about top 10 facts about Mullah Sadra. So before starting this video, please like this video, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for future updates. Mullah Sadra, also known as Sadr ed-Din Muhammad Shirazi, was a Persian Twelver Shia Islamic mystic, philosopher, theologian and scientist who led the Iranian cultural revival in the 17th century. Mullah Sadra, according to Oliver Leaman, is probably the most powerful and influential Persian philosopher of the last 4 centuries. He is regarded as master of the Illuminationist or Ishraqi school of philosophy, a pioneering figure who synthesized the many tracts of Persian Golden Age philosophies into what he called the Transcendent Theosophy or Nazariye-Motali. Here are 10 interesting things about him. Number 10. Mullah Sadra's existentialism should not be compared to Western existentialism, because he introduced a new philosophical insight in dealing with the essence of truth, and a significant change from essentialism to existentialism to Persian philosophy. His was a question of existentialist cosmology as it applied to God as opposed to the human, moral, and/or social issues at the heart of Russian, French, German or American existentialism. Mullah Sadra's theory attempted to reconcile Avicenna's Shihab al-Din Suhrawardi's Illuminationist philosophy, Ibn Arabi's Sufi metaphysics, and the Sunni Ash'ari, Shia Twelver theologies. The transcendent philosophy of the Four Journeys of the Intellect, or simply Four Journeys, is his most famous work. Number 9. Mullah Sadra was born in Shiraz, Iran in 1571, or 1572 to a prominent family of court officials. The Safavid dynasty ruled Iran during Mullah Sadra's period. Fars province was granted independence by Safavid kings, and it was ruled by the king's brother, Mullah Sadra's father Khwaja Ibrahim Kavami, a wise and loyal politician. Khwaja was prosperous and influential as the ruler of Fars province's vast territories. He had no children, but after much prayer and begging, God blessed him with a son, whom the family called Muhammad but referred to as Sadra. Years later, Sadra earned the nickname Mullah, which translates to great scientist. Khwaja's only child was Sadra. It was customary at the time for aristocrats' children to be trained by private teachers in their own palace. Sadra was a bright, disciplined, creative, studious, and curious young man who quickly mastered all of the lessons in Persian and Arabic literature as well as the art of calligraphy. He also studied horseback riding, hunting and combat tactics, arithmetic, astronomy, some medicine, jurisprudence and Islamic law. Before reaching puberty, as per old practices of the period, he was, however, primarily drawn to philosophy, especially mystical philosophy and gnosis. Number 8. Mullah Sadra became a master of his time's science. The most critical of these, in his opinion, was philosophy. Sadra learned the majority of his scholarly knowledge in Kazvin from 2 famous professors, Baha ad-Din al-Amili and Mir Damad, whom he accompanied to Isfahan. When the Safavid capital was moved from Kazvin to Isfahan in 1006 AH 1596 CE, Sheikh Baha was a master of Persian sciences as well as astronomy, theoretical mathematics, engineering, architecture, medicine and a few fields of hidden knowledge. Mir Damad was well versed in the sciences of his day, but he focused on jurisprudence, hadith and philosophy. Mir Damad was a master of Islamic philosophy, having studied both the Peripatetic, Aristotelian, and Illuminationist schools. Damad was Mullah Sadra's primary source of philosophical and Gnostic understanding, and he often referred to Damad as his true teacher and spiritual guide. Number 7. After completing his studies, Sadra started to investigate unorthodox teachings, and as a result some Shia ulama condemned and excommunicated him. He then went to a village near called Kahek, where he performed contemplative exercises for a long time. He wrote a number of minor works while in Kahek, including the Risala Tab'id and the Ketab Romauza Jahan. In 1612, Ali Quli Khan, the influential governor of Fars and son of Alawirdi Khan, asked Mullah Sadra to return to Shiraz and teach, and run a new madrasa devoted to the intellectual sciences. After the Hajj, he died in Basra and was buried in what is now the Iraqi city of Najaf. Sadra started writing treatises that synthesized various strands of current Islamic systems of thought during his time in Shiraz. The ideas of Sadra's school, which can be seen as a continuation of Mir Damad and Sheikh Bahai's school of Isfahan, were promulgated after Sadra's death by his students, some of whom would go on to become sought-after thinkers in their own right, such as Mullah Muhsin Kashani, Mullah Sadra's son-in-law, and Abdul Raza Lahiji. Number 6. Although the modern meaning of existentialism differs from Mullah Sadra's, he was the first to introduce the term. Life precedes the essence and is therefore primary. Mullah Sadra says, since everything must exist first and then have an essence. It's worth noting that Mullah Sadra's concern was with God and God's place in the universe, especially in the sense of reconciling God's role in the Quran with the Greek-influenced cosmological doctrines of Islam's Golden Age. In Mullah Sadra's metaphysics, life takes precedence over essence, i.e. quiddity. To put it another way, essences vary and are determined by existential intensity. As described by Henry Corbin, as a consequence, essences are not unchangeable. This schema has the advantage of being acceptable to the Quran's fundamental statement while not actually undermining any previous Islamic philosophers' Aristotelian or Platonic foundations. Number 5. Mullah Sadra in reality provides immutability to God alone, while also intrinsically connecting essence and life as well as God's power over existence. He solved the issue of God's knowledge of particulars, including those that are bad, without being necessarily responsible for them, as well as God's authority over the nature of things that provide the basis for evil to exist by doing so. This clever approach allows for free will, God's superiority, God's infinite wisdom, the nature of evil and concepts of existence, and essence that leave the two inextricably connected in terms of humans, but fundamentally separate in terms of God. Perhaps most importantly, the primacy of creation enables God to judge without being directly or indirectly influenced by the evil that is being judged. God does not need to be possessed by sin to understand it. God will judge the severity of sin based on how God perceives its presence. Number 4. The theory of Mullah Sadra is another core concept. In his philosophy, substantial motion, Arabic al-harakat al-Jafariya, is based on the premise that everything in the order of nature, including celestial spheres, undergoes substantial change and transformation as a result of the self-flow, Sarayan al-Wujud, and penetration of being, fade, that gives each concrete individual entity its share of being. Unlike Aristotle and Avicenna, who saw change as a four-category phenomenon involving quantity, kam, consistency, kayf, location, wad, and place, ayn, Sadra sees change as an all-encompassing fact encompassing the entire universe, including the category of substance, jawhar. Nothing may come into being without a reason, according to Sadra, for all contingent entities need a cause to tip the balance between existence and non-existence in favor of the former. Since the universe is predicated on the first act, God must not only exist, but also be responsible for the first act of creation. Number 3. Sadra also assumed that a causal regress was unlikely, because the causal chain could only operate in situations with a beginning, middle and end, such as 1. At the outset a pure cause, 2. At the end a pure result, 3. A cause and effect relationship. Mullah Sadra's causal nexus was a type of existential ontology within an Islamic cosmological framework. The causal end is as pure for Mullah Sadra as its corresponding beginning, placing God at both the beginning and end of the creative act. The Islamically acceptable basis for God's judgment of truth without being corrupted by its specifics was established by God's ability to calculate the strength of existential reality by measuring causal dynamics and their relationship to their origin rather than knowing their consequences. This was a brilliant answer to a question that had plagued Islamic philosophy for nearly 1,000 years: how can God judge sin without understanding sin? Number 2. A true argument, according to Mullah Sadra, is one that is true to the actual facts that exist. He believed in a philosophical rather than a formal concept of reality, believing that the universe is made up of mindless things that are always real, and that truth is not what is rationally reasonable within a given theory of description. Only linguistic research, according to Mullah Sadra, offers access to the truth of being. This truth principle has two levels: the argument that a proposition is valid if it corresponds to things in fact, and the claim that a proposition can be true if it conforms to the actual thing. Number 1. According to Mehdi Hayri Yazdi, Janan Azadi believes Hikmat Muta'alliya is a meta-language. This method may be used to assess the epistemological influence of Mullah Sadra's philosophical views. On Mullah Sadra's methodology, however, there are two major categories. In Hikmat Muta'alliya, one party was adamantly opposed to any kind of information systematization or methodological approach. The other group holds Mullah Sadra's viewpoint to be formal. They say that Mullah Sadra follows a consistent and methodological approach. What do you think about this video? Let us know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear from us again, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go.